Hi, and welcome to another Women in Business interview here on our HHL YouTube channel. I'm so glad you joined me again. I'm here today with Shivangi Garg, and I'm so excited to share more of her personal journey with you. She has a lot of different roles, let me put it that way, and she's going to share a lot about her corporate job and also her entrepreneurial journey, which is very interesting, and I cannot wait. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome, Shivangi. Thanks for joining.
Thank you very much, Alexandra, for having me. Such a pleasure.
So I teased a little bit saying that you have a lot of different jobs and roles currently in your career, in your life. Let's dive right into that. Tell us a bit about your job at Continental, and also after that, we'll head more into your entrepreneurial journey.
Sure, thank you. So at Continental, I'm actually responsible for sales program management, where I get to interact with the automotive manufacturers, such as Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, etc., and discuss what kind of future projects they want to have and what kind of planning they see in their cars of the future. And we kind of negotiate what can get into it from a technical side, from a more design perspective. So overall, I am dealing with a little bit of futuristic acquisitions. So to say, while yes, at the same time, making sure that the current projects that the automotive manufacturers are planning are also running fine and in place.
So was that the official job that you moved into after graduating from HHL? Maybe let's take a little step back, and also before we jump into the business part, tell us which program it was that you studied at HHL, and if that was actually where you ended up right after you graduated.
Right. So I started with full-time MBA program, the 21-month advanced track program in September 2014 at HHL, after which I did a 6-month internship at Continental Tires in product management, where I got to interact a little bit with how you can plan the future projects and programs and products. But yes, there was a difference that I was not very comfortable and convinced with the kind of products that I was dealing in. And therefore, I switched after the 6-month internship and, of course, writing my master thesis to another division within Continental, which deals with interiors. So the first job, that full-time position I started with, is the current position that I am at, which is the sales program management.
That's so interesting. And I know that parallel to that, you are always full of ideas and looking for new opportunities. You got involved in the first startup, I think, or your first business right out of HHL, if I remember correctly, and since have moved into another one. So I'd love to hear a bit more about how that came about and what you were working on.
That is true. And I think that was the HHL entrepreneurial spirit, kicking in, which definitely triggered a lot of good ideas to convert into businesses. And that's where we started with the travel industry startup. And we worked on it for let's say a couple of years until lockdown happened. And then we realized that this might not be a very profitable idea to proceed right now until everything figures out. But at the same time, since I'm also passionate about the technologies and the things that are coming up, we realize there is a huge market to tap in terms of machine learning and artificial intelligence. And this is where I started with a med tech startup, which is basically an AI-based diagnostics in 2019. And this is definitely keeping a hell lot busy. So, yeah.
Tell me what made you want to continue with the new business that you're working on right now? What kind of sparked your interest? Why add an entrepreneurial side to your life?
Good question. So I think for this, we definitely roll a lot back to even before I came to Germany. And this fire was actually born in India when I, after my graduation, started to work with a social startup. It was based on a social cause. And we eventually kind of, let's say, failed to establish it on a very good note. But this fire for being a social entrepreneur was still lit inside of me. And this was also another reason why I chose to further understand and expand my knowledge base at HHL. And I think the motivation comes from really, really deep insight that via startups, one is able to approach even a big problem in such a unique way, instead of waiting for years for the authorities or the processes in the world to change and do something. And I think this is the real motivation that keeps me wanting to have some drive towards being an entrepreneur and trying to make a better world, trying to change something in the world.
What's your vision with your business? What would you like to see changed?
Well, this is where I fall really entrapped towards a lot of investors, because the first thing I want to say is my vision is not necessarily wanting to make money. So the first things that I see is really making an impact is what I consider. Whatever I do, whatever problem I want to solve, as long as it is able to help even a few people in a niche market, I think that is what I will consider as a successful startup or a journey that I have taken. So my vision always remains to make a difference and to make an impact with what I do.
I think anyone can tell listening that you're a very positive person and have a very open and friendly personality, which of course is something that will make life and work so much easier, I think, going on. I wonder what kind of gets you motivated in your life? Is it having kind of the business and seeing that you can help people? Is it the people you surround yourself with? What would you say? What helps you stay positive and motivated?
Great question. And I think there is no one answer to it. I'd rather say it's a combination of a lot of things indeed. But the real drive that comes from within is the hunger to learn and to implement what I learn. And I think this is where I also try and connect with like-minded people or people I know who can help me and support me reach the next level. So it's overall, yes, seeing the results as well give you a different boost of motivation. So I would say a combination of a lot of things where intrinsically I am driven by trying to change and trying to learn how I can change some things.
We actually talked before this interview and I kind of got to know your story a little better. And you shared two really wonderful metaphors with me. I want to dive deeper into those, but first I'd like to have you tell us about them in your own words. There was one about a balloon and one about water. I'm going to say that much. Would you like to share those with us before we kind of get to go deeper?
For sure. So I think this also deals with your previous question where you asked about the motivation. And I think that's what I mean. The hunger to learn comes from. This is something that my father told me, that you should be like a balloon. It is not what is outside, but what is inside that takes you to the top. And I think that really, really matters in a lot of senses, where I see a lot of people are so much competent, and I think this is what drives a lot of people also to just be better and better at their job, rather than just focusing on the outside world or just thinking about the other materialistic things of life, so to say. But yeah, this is one metaphor that keeps me learning new things and try to implement them. And yes, of course, the second one that you mentioned about the water, the flowing water, is I think something that deals with the Greek philosophy in the past. Socrates, I think, as far as I can remember, B84A, where he says he gives a reference towards a flowing river, and this is where I think I interpret it as that one really needs to be constantly flowing forward with the opportunities that come along the way. And I think this can also be translated at my example, where we had to shut down the travel industry business, no matter how much forward we were. But at the same time, there are a lot of opportunities and you just need to keep going on.
I wonder, given all the experience you have as an entrepreneur and working in your current position, what would you like to pass on to, especially women in business who might feel like they're not where you're at right now? It's not moving ahead. It's not flowing as easily. Do you have any advice you could pass on?
Yeah, I mean, as much as it looks like everybody who's speaking has got it figured out, it is not the case. And I think that is how the reality should be. Not everybody is also in a position to have things clarified, and that is just totally fine. But what I think has worked for me personally to clarify a lot of things and understand a lot of things about my own self or about a particular situation, I'd say, has been to be really, really vulnerable. And by being vulnerable, of course, I totally understand that it is very scary to just be vulnerable. But I think at the same time, it is a very confident act of being authentic and asking for help in a lot of situations, because not one person does not know everything. And I think this is where sometimes being a little bit vulnerable gives you that energy to flex that muscle a little bit and make a decision in ambiguity, in uncertainties. And this is one thing that definitely I have implemented and have found to be very useful in my life. Apart from which, of course, there are several things that a lot of people talk about, that being bold and taking risks is such an integral part of being an entrepreneur, let's say, on the other side. I'm sure you understand that with your own venture yourself. And I think these things really are not just words. Once you start to implement them in your life and you kind of talk to yourself about it, that I think I am going to take that decision no matter what a lot of people have told me, gives you not just confidence, but a lot of times surprisingly amazing results.
So I agree, especially considering courage. I, for a long time, had the feeling that many people thought, for example, I had more courage than I would perceive myself. And I used to kind of think, well, everyone has courage, really, what's the big deal? But I see it in the conversations with the women I get to talk to here, and with so many other entrepreneurs and people in business, that it's actually such an essential point, an essential talent also to be courageous, even if you might not feel that courageous in the moment. And also, you've touched on it with being vulnerable, but asking for help, just the act of like reaching out to someone, and you don't even, I think, necessarily always have to know what you want to ask. It's more like kind of getting a reflection on your thoughts and what's happening, that I think has been incredibly helpful for me personally. I wonder if you've experienced that too.
I think I totally agree with you, that you just put it very beautifully. This is absolutely 90% of the time, so that's how it works, And that's what I mean by saying that a lot of things get clarified, just not about your own self, like you said, also about your own reflections of thoughts, and sometimes helps you make a certain decision in life if that's where you're stuck. So indeed, being vulnerable is not a sign of weakness in my eyes. And I think this is really, like I said before, a very confident act.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I'm so glad you shared that with us. I wonder, as a last question, looking into the future, as we know, the future, if we don't know now, we never know really what's going to happen, right? The past year has showed us things are so flexible, so ever changing, but still we of course get to have our plans and wishes. And so I'd like to know from your perspective and from everything you've kind of shared with us now, what is something you're looking forward to in the coming year, or maybe in the coming years, if you'd like to share as much?
Wow, that makes me think now, because I think from the last 3 years, I am nothing apart from my job and trying to manage a startup with it has crossed anything. But indeed, I think, yes, it is very important also in today's time to have a plan with a lot of flexibility. I think this is something the last 2 years have definitely taught us. And being in the current situation, it becomes all the more important to have a perspective. So for me personally, I think on a very closer to my heart level, I really want my startup to work and to be able to deliver something that will make a change and make an impact. And that, I think, is the highest on my agenda right now. But considering everything that is going on from my own country to everywhere in the world, I think another deep desire that I have right now is a little bit more stability everywhere. And I hope that these will actually happen in the next few years.
I can only support that. I do too. Thank you so much, Shivangi, for coming to us today, to sharing your success story, your professional journey. It's been a real pleasure, and I cannot wait to follow along what happens next for you.
I am so thankful for you to have me here, and have a very good day ahead.